Are you carrying more than anyone can see? You're holding your career together, showing up for aging parents, grieving relationships that quietly changed, and somewhere in the middle of all of that, you forgot to grieve any of it. Maybe you didn't realize you were supposed to grieve all of that. Today's guest, Reverend Christine Davies, is a hospital chaplain and spiritual director who sits with people who are at their most raw, most honest moments. And what she'll tell you is this: grief is not just about death, it is also about change. And change is constant. We are always grieving something. The question is whether we give ourselves permissions to feel it. You are allowed to feel it, and you are allowed to heal it.
My friend, not broken, disconnected.
That's what I keep coming back to, because most of us are walking through life thinking that we need to fix ourselves, do more, be better, when really we've just gotten disconnected from who we are. Welcome to Mindset Medicine. I am Dr. Tanya Berfield, speaker, mindset strategist, and someone who believes that real change happens when we bring together science, soul, somatics, and a dash of hippie woo. This podcast is all about coming back to yourself, about learning how to know yourself, trust yourself, align your life, and lead with confidence, integrity, and real power. Some weeks, it's just you and me, diving into mindset shifts, nervous system work, and the patterns that keep us stuck in overthinking, overfunctioning, and burnout. Other weeks, I'm sitting down with people who are doing something just a little bit better than we are, whether that is leadership, parenting, money, health, or just how they're showing up in their lives. Not because they have it all figured out, but because they have found something that works, and we get to learn from that. So if you have been feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or like you are doing everything right, but something still feels off, my friend, you are in the right place.
Oh, I was going to say, occasionally what I do notice is if the internet goes and there's a delay, sometimes if I turn my camera off and then turn it right back on, then that's a little bit better.
Yep. Perfect. And then I just saw it pop up. I saw a thing in my camera window that says actual recording quality is higher than we're seeing. So I think it buffers it and fixes a lot of that for us too. All right. Awesome. So I already started the recording just so we're ready to go. So I will get us started if you are ready.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, hello. Hi, friends. Welcome back. So I have a special guest with us today. We have Reverend Christine Davies. I'm super excited. Just this little brief conversation that we had before we started was pretty exciting for me. There's a lot to talk about. One thing in particular that we will get to is her vice theory that she was writing about in an article that she had just written. And I want to get to that because it very much, I think, applies to many of us. But we're going to talk about all things transformation, self-care, emotional intelligence, grief, spirituality, you name it. So Reverend Christine is a hospital chaplain and a spiritual director. So a little bit different than typically what we're talking about here, but also I think really necessary. So Christine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. I'm so honored to be a guest and to have this conversation with you that your listeners can hopefully enjoy.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to kick it right off. So tell us, we have your name, tell us where you're from and what led you to the work that you are doing.
Yeah, so I am from New Jersey, born and raised here. Never thought I would be living here again, but there we go. And so what led me to this work that I'm doing now is a little bit of a long journey. I'll try to give you the short version.
That's okay.
But essentially, I grew up, my parents went to the local Presbyterian church in town, and I really took to it. I loved going. I was playing handbells in the choir, in the bell choir, doing youth group. I really enjoyed that work and was a very precocious kid and was convinced of God's presence in my life from a young age and was also convinced that, God wanted me to help people. And I thought the best way I could help people is by becoming a medical doctor. I was convinced that that was the route I was going to take. And it helped that my mom was a nurse and kind of pushed that dream a little bit. I would read the Merck Medical Dictionary for fun and play with stethoscopes. And then that wound up helping me to go into emergency medicine. I worked as an EMT for a number of years, and I was in
Okay.
the backs of ambulance with people. Mostly I was in the back because I'm not a
Mhm.
great driver. So I was always the one that was holding people's hands as we were going to the hospital. And, I was doing minor wound repair, administering oxygen, but it was really that emotional support that I was offering to people that felt so
Mhm.
valuable, because a lot of times the people on those stretchers, they were scared. They didn't know what was going on with them. Something suddenly happened to them. And so I was providing this supportive presence to them, and really normalizing what they were going through. And around the same time, a few years after that, I wound up becoming a patient myself, and
Mm.
was in and out of hospitals. Eventually, I got the diagnosis of generalized epilepsy, which I'm fortunate is very well managed today. But at the time, that was pretty shocking to me. And there was a lot of
Mhm.
misdiagnosis and trial and error. And I lost a lot of faith in the medical profession that I had once held so high. And the church that I was attending had a brand new minister right out of seminary, the first woman minister I'd ever known. And
Mm.
she took me out to dinner in between my hospitalizations, and we just talked about what it was like, what I was going through, how it was
Yeah.
impacting me emotionally and spiritually. And that was the first time I received what's called spiritual care. And it helped me to realize, oh, there's different ways to help people. It's not just the medical, but it is that spiritual
Mhm.
element. It is the emotional element. So I found more healing in that than I did in any of, the medications, or, I take all my medications. Let me be
Sure,
clear.
sure.
But I really enjoyed thinking about how can I help people from this framework. And so I went to seminary knowing that I did not want to be one of those ministers preaching from the pulpit every week. That was not my jam. I
Mhm.
did all those internships, and I confirmed that's not where I felt led to go. And I actually also got a degree in social work at the same time, and
Mm.
worked as a cognitive behavioral therapist for a little while. But I really miss talking to people about their spirituality. I did a lot of intakes for the community mental health center that we were in, and I would ask on page 36, what does spirituality mean to you? Is it important? Yes or no? And had to answer just in one line. And I found myself just wanting to spend all my time in that question with people.
Mm.
And so
Mhm.
that's what led me to do an internship and then a residency in a hospital as a chaplain. And now I lead a chaplain program in New Jersey at a large level one trauma center. And I actually teach students as well who are learning to be chaplains. And I'll teach medical students about spirituality, and working with patients, working with families. And then in addition to that, because I didn't have enough to do, I started a private
Sounds
practice.
familiar.
Uh, some of your viewers or your listeners may also
Yeah, yeah,
resonate with
we
that.
get it.
You need a few side hustles. And so my therapist sometimes says to me, I've lost track of the number of jobs you have. Can you remind me?
Yep, I get
So
it.
I have a private practice that's spiritual direction. And that is where I
Okay.
meet with people one on
Mhm.
one over time, and really talk about what's going on for them spiritually. And maybe they're wanting to try new spiritual practices. Maybe they're really angry at God and need a place to talk through it. And
Mhm.
so I kind of do that to balance out kind of the short term work of the hospital that I'm doing, but the long term work of being with people over time. So,
That makes so much sense. I can see how you would need to have both of those things, sort of the
mhm.
big picture plus the one-on-one. I picked up there something that you said. So you were sort of working in the area of CBT, and then
Mhm.
you've got this spiritual piece. I I had I just can imagine how they came together and how they do come together. So
Mhm.
talk about that a little bit, because I think that's probably pretty fascinating.
Yeah, so I tend to use some CBT skills still in my work
Mhm.
now, and it can be really helpful. A lot of what we learned in social work school, looking at the bigger picture, the person and environment, looking at
Mhm.
all of the structural issues at play and how society is involved, as well as looking at the individual. One of the best takeaways that I got from that was knowing that the person themselves or the client has their own inner resources, and as a former therapist, now as a spiritual director, a lot of my job is to help them facilitate those resources within themselves. So I'm not
Hmm.
prescriptive. I'm not giving answers. I don't have all the answers, frankly.
Right.
But it's really, I've heard other people describe it as being like a midwife. You're not
Hmm.
the one that is,
Hmm.
giving birth to new life, but you're the one supporting the individual as they go through this transformation.
It reminds me of there are 2 words that because, I work at in higher ed, and so 2 of the words that we're always talking about are coping skills and
Mm-hmm.
resiliency, and what
Mm-hmm.
we're not seeing today,
Yeah.
knowing that most of the students who are coming into higher ed right now have, they were younger, so, like, early element or higher elementary, middle school when the pandemic hit, and so they learned very different abilities around resilience and
Mm-hmm.
coping skills. And so it sounds to me that's exactly what you're sort of bridging with spirituality, which is really fascinating.
And then the other piece of that too is that everyone's coming from spirituality from different places. And so
Yes,
something that I like
yes.
to delineate is, the difference between religion and spirituality. So
Mhm.
religion, there's lots of definitions out there. The one that I have come up with is that it's an agreed upon set of rituals, practices, and beliefs held by a community for the sake of communing with the divine.
Mhm.
And then, so most people know when they think of religion, they think, okay, Catholicism, Protestantism, Buddhism,
Mhm.
Islam, Judaism. We kind of have a picture of that. Spirituality, I think, is harder for people to understand what it encompasses. And
Mhm.
the definition is much broader. So it's how
Mhm.
do you connect to and explore the world within and around you? How do you make meaning and find transcendence? So
Mhm.
it's so expansive, and sometimes people I'm working with will be like, "Well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual." Or
Mhm.
sometimes people think, if I am not engaged in a religion, can I even be spiritual at all?
Right.
And I like to say
Right.
you can be both. For some people,
Yep.
religion meets some aspects of that spirituality. For some people, it meets all of it, and for some people, religion meets none of it.
Mhm.
And you all have the right to embrace your own spirituality in
Mhm.
whatever way that looks like
I
for
was
you.
just gonna say, and the way that you choose to do that, I think
Mhm.
that's the thing that's so beautiful about spirituality. I know for me, so based on some very early experiences and some family traumas, religion was not something that I was going to be able to accept. Even being able to say the word God for a period of time
Mhm.
made me really angry. And so I struggled, and I really, really struggled with that. And I bet I was in my 40s before I came to the realization that I didn't have to be angry about
Mhm.
that, and then I got to be whatever this definition of this was for me, because I got to a point that I was like, "Wait a minute, I know there's something more, I know there's something bigger, and I can't just shut this down. There's something here." And so I couldn't use the word God for a little while. I could talk about angels, and I could talk about universe, and I could talk about it in that way, or at least think about it in that way. And being able to do that then brought me to a place of being comfortable and
Mhm.
understanding that it there is something there, and it definitely there's a lot of spirituality there, but I had to be able to do it my way versus the rules or regulations that were going to be created, and knowing that knowing that there was anger associated with some of those things and
Yeah, I
frustrations.
think that's true for so many people. And I always
Mhm.
match whatever language my patients
Mhm.
or my clients are using. So for some people, we talk about the divine. For some people, we talk about
Mhm.
nature. For some people, we talk
Yep.
about the transcendent. And then, sometimes I'll walk into a room as a hospital chaplain and the patient's like, well, I'm atheist. I'm like, that's okay. I know you still
Cool.
have a spirituality. I'm not here. I'm not the church police. I'm not here to convert you.
Sorry, you'll
Um,
need to go.
In fact, we're probably going to have a great conversation because that means that you've thought a lot about what you
Right.
believe and what you don't believe. And so,
Yep.
in those instances, sometimes I say, what is weighing most on your heart? What matters
Mhm.
to you today? Because that is often an entree point into someone's spirituality.
Mhm.
There's a theologian, Paul Tillich, is an dead old white guy, but he knows his stuff sometimes. He talked about like religion as like your ultimate concern. Like, what is the thing that really
Mhm.
motivates you, really connects you to yourself, to others, and to the world at large? And that
Mhm.
can be so much what spirituality is for people. And there is a lot of toxicity within
Yeah.
religion. As you
Yeah.
mentioned, there's a lot of trauma. I hear a
Mhm.
lot of those stories. And some of what
Mhm.
I attempt to help people do is to sometimes I think a religion and spirituality can be like a ball of yarn that is all knotted up.
Mhm.
And I think trauma can sometimes be like that too. And some of what we have to do is look at, slowly untangle and parse out, and
Mhm.
then examine that to say, okay, is this something I'm keeping? Does this still work for me or does it not? And I'm going to cut that part out.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people, look at the ball of yarn and they're like, that's too much. I'm not touching that.
Right.
And
Right.
there's nothing in my upbringing religiously that I can draw from. And then it does take some time and some intention to say, okay, it wasn't all bad. There are parts that were awful and that
Mhm.
I don't want to revisit and I don't want to be part of my current spiritual framework. But there are other
Mhm.
parts. For a lot of people, those are like the community elements. For some people, that might be like the singing elements,
Mhm.
or the individual relationship with God, not mediated through someone else. That's the part that I want to explore in this next chapter of my life.
For sure. I imagine that when you were in the hospital and making those visits, some of those, I imagine it's a mixed bag, right? Some of those conversations are so welcome and so well received, and I bet others are a little bit contentious. How do you handle that?
That's a great question. Occasionally they are contentious. I like to tell my staff and my students who are newer at this work, I said, if a patient kicks you out of the room, that's great because they don't have the authority to kick a lot of people out of the room, right? We're one of the few disciplines where they can say no to us. They can't
Right.
necessarily say no to the person coming to take their vitals or poking them and
Yeah.
prodding them. And so it does give people a sense of agency. So
Oh my
really
goodness.
wanting to respect that and honor that. Um, what I find more often than that actually is sometimes I will talk with someone. They're like, "Well, I'm not religious." And sometimes I'll joke and say,
Mhm.
"That's okay. I'm not religious today either." Tell me what is weighing on you. What is on your heart today?
Mhm.
And we'll have a long conversation, and toward the end they'll say, I never told anyone that before. And then they might say, you know, I didn't know that I wanted to talk to you at first, but now I'm really glad that I did.
Mhm.
And to me, those are just the heartwarming moments of
Right.
meeting people where they are, and just journeying alongside them,
Mhm.
especially because hospitalizations can bring up a lot for people, even if folks are there for something pretty routine. Maybe the
Mhm.
last time they were in the hospital, they were saying goodbye to a loved one. Or now they
Right.
have all this time to think and they are wrestling with their own mortality, some for the first time. And
Mhm.
so we want to make ourselves available. And a lot of what I do hear about is grief and loss in all of its various
Mhm.
forms.
Yeah, I definitely want to spend some time talking about that too. So, knowing that I also work in higher ed, one of the things that we are talking about a lot right now is grief, and it might be loss. So, we are definitely seeing a significant amount of loss of loved ones, but it's also about other things too, like identity and just
Hmm.
loss of relationships or friendships, or transition to college means that you're
Hmm.
shifting your social networks and just your ability to navigate the world the way you had been. It's just very different. And so pets too, like that is
Hmm.
they've lost pets, and especially when they've lost pets while they're not at home to be a part of that process.
Mm.
There's so many layers to what we're
Hmm.
seeing. So talk to me a little bit about just like what you see, what you know, how you work through them.
Yeah. So I believe anytime there's change, even good change, even
Mhm.
change that we're looking forward to, promotion at work, moving to a bigger house,
Yep.
having a wedding, even with all of those, there is loss. So, for instance, when
Mhm.
I used to officiate a lot of weddings, I don't do that quite so much anymore. But I remember being at a wedding once. It was the rehearsal dinner, and the bride's mother was crying. And I'm like, oh no, does she not like the groom? What's going on? Is
Right.
this wedding going to happen? And I kind of just went up next to her and I'm like, what's going on? Because I do sit with a lot of tears as a chaplain. I'm
Mhm.
used to that.
Mhm.
And she said, no, 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 I am happy. She's like, I just realized that after tomorrow, I'm not going to be her emergency contact anymore. And so that her
Oh,
relationship was changing. As a
yes.
mom, you might be able to relate. And so I think even though it was a welcome change, there was
Mm-hmm.
loss to it. And so
Mm-hmm.
I hold what some might consider to be a controversial opinion, which is since change is constant, something is always changing. And since change brings about loss, we're
Yeah.
always grieving something at
Mm-hmm.
any given time.
Mm-hmm.
Now your listeners might be thinking, "Oh, Christine, I haven't really gone through much, recently.
Yep.
I don't know
Yep.
what I'm grieving." But as you pointed out, there are so many types of loss. There, of
Mm-hmm.
course, we think about the loss of the permanent loss of
Yep.
a person, so death, and that's the bulk of the work that I do in the hospital is around end of life. But there's relationship loss, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
just moving away or having a friendship kind of fizzle out. There's material loss, like not having, I might
Mm-hmm.
lose like an heirloom piece of jewelry and that might
Mm-hmm.
devastate me. There's a loss called this one's the hardest I think to kind of quantify. It's called intrapsychic loss, which is almost the idea that our life is not going the way that we thought it was going to go. And it's all, sometimes people refer to it as like it's like a dream that got deferred and didn't happen. And speaking of higher education,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I've seen this with not getting into the school of one's choice
Mm-hmm.
or not
Yep.
getting the job that someone really thought they were going to get. And again,
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing tangible, but there is a
Mm-hmm.
loss because this is not what I thought my life was going to
Right.
be. Or even with caregiving, like not knowing that that was going to be the path that you were going to be in.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think that if we can identify the places of loss in our life, it can be helpful because it gives us a name to it. I've talked to so many
Mm-hmm.
people that they're like, I just don't know why I feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
I feel out of sorts and I shouldn't. Not everything is going okay in my life. I'm like, no, that's loss. You're grieving right now.
Yeah.
It may not be
I
the
think
biggest grief of your life, but it's grieving.
Right. I think so many of us are probably experiencing this. Well, I know we are, but without even recognizing
For
or
sure.
understanding or giving us ourselves the grace to know that that's what we're dealing with. I think not very long ago on this podcast, I was talking with a guest and I shared that as a woman that, or my husband and I together raised 3 boys, and what I did not see coming, because while I was raising those boys, I was going to school. I had a professional career. Like I was doing all the things. And so what I did not recognize was my identity around being a mom. And so when they weren't
Mm-hmm.
here anymore, I was like, what do I do? Like I am used to just having them be a
Mm-hmm.
part of my day every single day. And I don't know if you know this, but when boys move out, they don't call you. And so
That's good for me to know because I have 2 boys that are on the younger
oh,
side, and there are
oh
days where they
yeah.
drive me up the wall, and I'm like, well, "How long until you move
Yeah.
out?" So it's
Yeah, no,
helpful to
I
hear
counted
that.
those days, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and, like,
Mm-hmm.
when they were younger, I was like, "I never want these kids to leave, I want a family compound, I want their partners to be a part of our lives," like, and then by the time they were finishing up college and getting ready to move out, I was like, "I need you out of my house, like, it's time for you to go." They just
Mm-hmm.
are they shouldn't be home anymore, I think, and so I was devastated. So Trey, who's our youngest, left for the military, and it was 6 months of like, I could talk to him once every couple of weeks for, a couple of
Oh
minutes.
gosh.
And I struggled like to have him be
Mm-hmm.
the last one at home because I just didn't know because I still
Mm-hmm.
had at least another one left every
Mm-hmm.
time somebody left. And so I just didn't know that was coming. And man, that was a rough couple of months for me. I really had a hard time. The other
I
boys paid
hear
for
this
that.
a lot, and the other grief the other type of grief that brings up is like, especially because you know that it's coming. So anytime that we know that
Hmm.
loss or change is coming,
Yep.
there's anticipatory grief, which can be a
Hmm.
blessing and it can also be a burden,
Mm.
because you have time to prepare, but it's still so hard. And everything feels
Yes.
more heightened as a result.
Yep.
I was just talking to someone the other
That, oh
day,
my
and her
goodness.
one is about to leave. And so she was saying, like,
Mhm.
the senior year, everything is like, it's the last of these. So it's like the last
Mm-hmm.
football game. It's the last, dance. It's the last time we're going to have Christmas before they move out. And so it's a whole
Yep.
year of last that can also be exhausting.
Yeah, it is a lot. But you know what else that reminds me of is what we had talked about, your vice sort of
Mm.
metaphor. Because I'm sort of in this boat when what we talked about earlier being the sandwich generation, but not
Mhm.
technically for me because it's with my grandmother. So she's 90 and in the starts of dementia. And so knowing that she's not the person she used to be. She
Mhm.
definitely is not making me feel warm and fuzzy on a regular basis. That's not what
Mhm.
happens at that stage of
Mhm.
life when you've got
Yeah.
that sort of disease. And so we are anticipating this, right? Like she's not in
Mhm.
fantastic health. We know something's coming and it's a matter of time and we're just trying to keep her happy and comfortable the best that we can. But then also just knowing that's coming and what that means for all of
Mhm.
us just
Mhm.
really kind of stinks. And so it's sort of twofold, right? Like it's wearing on all of us to do this and to see her be the person that she is not. Like
Yeah.
that's not who she is. And we know she's
Mm.
not happy being this way, but also being without her is going to be really challenging too.
Mhm. Oh, it's so hard, especially for caregiving when people are going through dementia or cognitive decline, because
Mhm.
it's like you've already lost parts of them already,
Oh, for sure.
before you've lost them fully.
Mhm.
And something I like to remind caregivers, and I work with a lot of, family caregivers at the hospital, is, it's okay to have some of these feelings. I
Mhm.
think sometimes in society, we're all like, oh, you're a superhero, you're doing this out of love. And I think that's not always helpful rhetoric because it can dismiss the fact that it's easy sometimes to get really angry at people that you're caring for. Or
Mhm.
I've had family members tell me of patients like, I don't want them to be gone, but I know that there'll be some relief for me when that happens, particularly
Right.
if they're suffering physically.
Mhm.
And so it's a really difficult spot to be in. So I think even if we can normalize some of the emotions around it,
Mhm. Yep.
that is supremely helpful. And yeah, talk about being in a sandwich generation. And so the
Mm.
metaphor that I came up with is, I'm not a carpenter at all. I can put together IKEA furniture. That's about it. But I had to take wood shop in high school.
Mhm.
And I still have a spice rack somewhere from there. And we had these vices that we would use. So there are
Mhm.
these tools where you have, two pieces of wood and I don't know, screw thingies that can push them together to hold the wood in
Mhm.
place when you're gluing it and whatnot. And to me, that's what it means to be in the sandwich generation. Because it's not just you have two pieces of bread, it's you are
Mhm.
getting squeezed from two different angles, from two different generations. And I was recently rereading an article from NPR, and they had written that caregiving can excavate the soul because it can force someone to kind of put their whole life on pause and
Mhm.
question their identity, and
Yes.
is just logistically, financially, emotionally, and sometimes physically overwhelming. And our society doesn't support that at all.
Mhm. It definitely does not. Well, I remember, I think it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, my mom was venting about something my grandma had said or done, and she was like, I feel guilty because I'm going to miss her when
Mhm,
she's gone." And
mhm.
I stopped her and I was like, "You don't need to feel guilty about
Yeah.
that, first of all, and second of all, I already miss her because this is
Yeah.
not the
This isn't
woman that I
her.
grew up with,"
Yeah. So
right?
you're already
Right.
grieving even before her death.
Exactly, and that was several years ago,
Yeah.
and then I was actually being interviewed on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and it was for caregivers, and how do you
Mm.
use nervous system regulation, and it was just happened to be, just perfect timing. It was like, it just so happens that last week, I left her house, and I cried on the way home because
Mm.
she was never warm and fuzzy to start with, and I
Mhm.
was thinking dementia might make her, kind of
It
nicer,
does happen sometimes, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
it didn't. She doubled down.
Mm. Mm.
And so she said some things that night, and it just there was a lot, right? It was a lot of
Yeah.
pressure. I've got a high stakes job. I've got a high emotional stakes job.
Yeah.
I've got, some stuff going on with one of the kids at the same time. And then, just all of the things are piling up. And she just said
Mhm.
some things that were not very nice on top of that was like my third trip to the grocery store that week for her, which is not a thing that I do for myself, let alone like I don't go, I just don't like it. And so to have to do it for her, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I do
This
it.
is probably
It's fine.
because you're also like a highly sensitive person. I struggle with grocery
Right.
shopping
Oh,
sometimes. I'm
I
like, you will
will
not
not.
catch me in a mall. There's so much
Mm-mm.
stimulation there.
Nope, not
Yeah.
doing it. Nope. So I order, my husband picks it up. I just don't do it. so, so I had it was just that day. And so as I was driving home and crying, I was like beating myself up, like, this is, you're
Mm,
better than this. Don't do this thing. And I was like, oh, hold on, sister. This is, you
mm,
teach this stuff. Now you need to call yourself into it. And so I did. I was able to work myself through it and it's fine. And so I did. I also do some Reiki work around her too. And it seems to be giving her some alleviating some of her
mm,
stress and pressure. I hope maybe it's just my wishful thinking. I hope that it's working for her. But I think that my point to all of that is, you do get to grieve this process in your own way
mhm.
on your own timeline. And you also need to give yourself some grace around it because there's a
Absolutely.
lot of expectation here. And that vice metaphor, I mean, really resonates with me because the pressure is incredible and you want to get it
Mhm,
right and you want to get it right for
mhm,
everybody. Ugh.
mhm. Yeah, no, it's so hard. But I think the crying and the letting it out
Mm-hmm.
is huge. And, sitting with tears, I believe that tears are so sacred and they can be
Mm-hmm.
kind of a portal to our soul at times.
Yep.
And there's new research coming out too about like how they do help regulate nervous systems, but
Mm-hmm.
just letting it out somewhere and honoring what you're going through and what you're
Yep.
feeling
Yep.
is just so key and hard to do.
Yeah. I think that like listening to you talk and I can just imagine how people are willing to just share and talk about most anything because you come at it from such a non-judgmental place that your belief system is your belief system. I'm not going to give you a hard time or try to change your mind. I have to imagine that that is the thing or a key that makes people want to work with you or feel a little bit more comfortable about that.
That's my hope, is that I'm definitely not holier than thou. And, someone said to me the other day, they're like, oh, I didn't even realize you were ordained. You're just so like down to earth. I'm like, I think that's
I
a
love that.
compliment.
For sure.
But yeah, and I like to say I'm theologically flexible and really.
I love that statement.
Yeah, and my own like spirituality has evolved over the years too, and I
Mhm.
learned so much from
Yeah.
my clients and from my
Mhm.
patients and from those families, and so just also being interested in people and knowing that different things work for different people.
Mhm. For sure. I also picked up a line on your website that cracked me up, so I think that you've got a great sense of humor, and it was I have to read it. It said, "Drinking coffee and eating chocolate count as spiritual practices."
Yes, that also might be controversial, but I do think that they do. Um, and so, for instance, like it's about how you do it with intention. And
Mhm.
and and speaking of different types of vices, like coffee is my vice. I drink way too much
Same.
of it,
Yep.
and I like
Yep.
order special beans, and it's a whole process to even make a cup of coffee.
Yep.
And and there's a difference if I am like just slurping it down quickly in the morning to get the caffeine in before I have to leave
Mhm.
for work or get the kids on the bus. And, I've abandoned my mug somewhere in like the hallway and I
Mhm.
don't even know where it is.
Yep.
Versus if I have a little bit more space in my mind, in my life, in my day, and it's not the middle of winter and I'm sitting outside on my back
Mhm.
deck
Yep.
noticing like, oh, this is a different like bean than I had the other day, or like feeling the sun
Mhm.
on me, listening to the bird song, and just like having those moments of gratitude and peace.
Mhm.
It's the same act, but it's done in so many different ways. And so I
Yeah.
think a lot
Yep.
of what we do in our everyday lives can actually be spiritual practices. We don't have to like add things to our to-do list. And I actually
Mhm.
advise a lot of my people not to do that. You don't need to feel
Mhm.
guilty for, not meditating for
Right.
20 minutes a day when you've never meditated before in your life. Like that's not the
It's not
starting
gonna
point.
happen. Yep.
But like, how can we almost habit stack our spiritual
Mhm.
practices to make it something that you're already doing and just
Yep.
being more mindful about it in that moment?
hmm Right. It's about creating intention and using all of your
Hmm.
senses, causing like pull a little pause in there. Those are the moments that change your day, change your outlook, change your mindset, all of the fun things.
And
Absolutely. I love
look,
that
I
so
forget to do
much.
them all the time. Like this morning, my coffee, like, I don't even know where the cup is. But it's about like resetting and knowing that I always have an opportunity to return to what does ground me.
hmm Yep. And recognizing the things that are sustainable. So I think you sort of touched on this. Like you can set a practice and you can decide this is the thing that's going to make you all better. It's going to fix all of the things. But if it's not working, then throw it out the window and find the next
Yes.
thing that works. It's
Yes. Oh,
okay.
I like to tell people this all the time. Like, especially as a spiritual director, I'm like, look, there's like a smorgasbord of spiritual practices. There are so many different practices out there if you're wanting to try something that most people don't even learn growing up in religious institutions. And
hmm
there may be something that works for you for a season and then it doesn't. And that's okay.
Yes.
Just
Yep.
jettison it and let's find something else. I had
Yes.
a client not so long ago who was going through, what I might call, there's a term that we use sometimes, it's like dark night of the soul. And
hmm
sometimes grief can bring that about. Sometimes it's just a spiritual, real malaise, and it can almost look like depression, but it's a little bit different.
hmm
Um, and I said, well, what's something that you can do in this moment? And we came up with this idea of she was just going to light a candle. That was it. She wasn't going to
hmm
pray. She wasn't going to read anything. She wasn't going to, she was just going to light a candle, and that was going to be it. Just that intention once a day, a small practice. Or
hmm
I was talking with someone else the other day, and they're a huge runner, and for them, like they always run with something in their ears, which I would need because I hate running. I have to like distract
Same.
myself from the pain. But they said, I'm going to not run with like a podcast in my ears, unless
hmm
it's this podcast, in which case everyone should be running with this podcast. Uh, but I'm just going to enjoy like the sounds of
hmm
nature and
hmm
like the cadence of the football of my steps. And
Yep.
that's going to get me in touch with what's going on with me and in
hmm
the world around me. So they can be really simple things. It doesn't have to be
hmm
anything that is extreme. And I'm saying this
Yep.
as, someone who I also work with a lot of clergy who feel
hmm
like they have to do, all of the things and read their Bible and look at the original Greek and Hebrew. Look, if that's what feeds you,
hmm
feel free. But a lot of people I know that's
Yep.
not what feeds them.
I also think that you led to a point too that this is true for me, and I think it's probably true for a lot of my listeners, is like high performers and people that have to do more and more and more and more. I struggle with doing less. And so
Hmm.
if I am out for a walk, I should be listening to a book or a podcast, or I should be learning
How do I
something
multitask?
and right. And
Hmm.
so it snowballs and it snowballs and snowballs. And then every once in a while I have to be like, stop it. You don't have to listen to something while you're getting ready in the morning
Hmm.
or while you're out for a
Hmm.
walk or while you're driving in. You can enjoy a
Hmm.
song, you can enjoy the sounds of nature, you can just pause and and pause and just reflect, because that's where creativity and actual efficiency and
Hmm.
production comes from, by being
Hmm.
able to pause and rest and reset a little bit. So I think that's a fantastic point for all of us to hear.
Yeah. And this is the society that we're like swimming in, right? It's so hyper
Mhm.
productive. We're always on our
Mhm.
phones. We're always being asked to do a
Yep.
million things. So it is kind of countercultural even to say,
Mhm.
I'm gonna drive in silence today. I'm not gonna listen to
Yes.
anything. Or a practice that I like to suggest to people when they're really struggling is, go outside. You can take your phone with you, but just go outside for a short walk. It doesn't have to be far. And it can be around your house or your apartment complex or whatever. And just find beauty. Like look for something that is
Mm.
beautiful. And if you want to, you can take a picture of it,
Mhm.
so you remember it.
Yep.
And sometimes that helps
Yep.
because you're like, okay, yeah, I can get my phone out. Just look for something that is beautiful outside. And it might be a
Mhm.
bird. It might be a blade of grass. It might be, the way that a piece of trash is glimmering in the sunlight. You might be
Mhm.
surprised by where you find
Yep.
beauty.
So true. And which also then brings us to the point of gratitude, right? Which that
Mhm.
creates the transformation and mindset shift. That's all you're doing is expressing gratitude by looking for beauty. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And a
Mhm.
practice that I like to do around gratitude is, because sometimes it feels so big, like, oh, I have to be grateful
Mhm.
for my family, for my
Yep.
health, for my
Enforced.
job.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm like, so
Mhm.
I did this a couple years ago where I started a practice of micro gratitude. So at the end of each
Mhm.
day, I would pick 3 things that I'm grateful for, but the idea is that they have to be really small things. So for
Mhm.
today, it might be I'm grateful that I remembered to fill up some water as we were talking so that I could
Yep.
stay hydrated. Or I might be grateful, you can't see it right now. I'm wearing an electric blanket because it is so cold in my house. I'm grateful for the heat of that blanket, or I'm
Yep.
grateful for getting to meet you and getting to
Mhm.
hear some of your story and connect with you. Those are
Yeah.
3 things that just happened within these past 5 minutes.
Yep.
And so that can rewire our brains so that we're
Mhm.
looking for that gratitude all the time.
Yes, I think that is absolutely yes, 100%. Absolutely. I talk about that a lot, like the ability to look for the positive, which is it doesn't have to be those huge shifts. It doesn't have to be forced positivity. It doesn't have to be any of
Mhm.
those kinds of things, but they really do create massive mindset shifts when you do them, even in the smallest, tiniest, consistent bits.
Yeah.
I
And
love
and to
this.
be clear
Uh-huh.
too,
Mhm.
it's not minimizing the suffering because I sit with so much suffering and
Mhm.
there is
Mhm.
a lot of toxic positivity. There's certainly toxic spirituality that goes
Mhm.
around that, it's like, oh, you just have to like give it to God or you just have to, be grateful all the
Yep.
time. No, no, no. You can have pain and also have gratitude in the midst of pain.
Yep, that's so great. So, is there anything else that you shared a couple of things, especially for people that are in grief? And I think that a lot of the people listening will be able to identify with that. So you shared like just if you're in grief and you're trying to work through that, just find one small thing that you can. You
Mhm.
mentioned lighting the candle, going for a walk, those sorts of things. Is there anything else that you would recommend that we try?
Yeah, so I think sometimes it can be helpful to not carry it alone
Mm,
because we can get really isolated at times when we're going through something difficult.
hmm
And so maybe you have a trusted friend, maybe you have a stranger on the internet. Like
hmm
there's Facebook support groups for everything now.
Yep.
Finding at least one other person that they might not get it completely, but someone
hmm
that you can, you know, talk to about what you're going through. And if you're feeling like you're in the middle of the darkness, which a lot of my clients or patients feel like, it's like one person that can be that beacon of light for you. And
hmm
sometimes those are professionals, right? So sometimes those are therapists,
hmm
sometimes they are spiritual directors,
Yep.
or hospital chaplains if you happen to be as a patient. But I think trying to find connection to someone else can really help people begin to put their lives back together in a new way that's going to be different. And then
Mm.
to be gracious for yourself in terms of the time. A lot of people are like, oh, I should be over this by now. And, that's a great myth of grief. We
Mhm,
never move on from it, we move
mhm.
with it, and it
Right.
changes us.
Yep, and I think the second you think you're over it, you just get smacked in the face with something
Oh
new
my
that
gosh.
brings it right
Yeah.
back up for you in
There's a
a
term
new and
for that.
different way. Ooh, what
So,
is it?
yeah, a grief burst is the term for
Ah.
that. And it can be really difficult because a
Mhm,
lot of people I know, they're like, "Oh, I thought I was over this, and then this happened," and
mhm.
they feel like they're like backtracking. So it could be something like simple as you're in the grocery store that we hate to go to, and you see, your loved one who died, you see their favorite cereal, and that just snaps you right back into it. Or a
Yes.
lot of times I
Yep.
hear from people who have gone through death of a loved one and they go to call them and forget for a minute that they
Mm,
can't call them.
right.
So yeah, little reminders of whatever loss people are experiencing or going
Mhm,
through can snap people right back into it. But it's actually not a marker that you're, not further along in your journey. It's part
mhm.
of the process. It is completely normal, but it takes people by surprise and sometimes scares them.
Yeah, I can imagine, I can imagine. All right. This was a fantastic conversation. I feel like we could go for another 3 hours because there are, like,
I'm just
6
gonna have
more
to,
topics.
drive and come meet you. Yep.
Fantastic. So tell us where we can find you so that anyone listening, if they would like to connect, they could do that.
Sure. So I hope no one here listening finds me in the hospital. I hope
I hope that
people
too.
don't meet me there. But I do have a website. It's Christine V, as in Victor, Davies.com. And on there, if people wanted to connect with me for spiritual direction, I do have some openings for that. But the best place probably is on Substack. I write a lot of articles around all of these topics. So I have an article on caregiving. I have an article on all the different types of loss. I have lots of articles on spirituality, on self-care, different practices you can try. They're all free. So you can read all of them in the archives as well. That's journeying alongside at Substack.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I will put those links in the notes as well. Christine, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it was such a delight. I love to get to know you. I hope your listeners enjoy it as well.
I'm sure they will. Thank you.
We never move on from grief. We move with it. That's what Christine had to say today. And I want you to sit with that for just a second, because how many of us have been waiting to feel better, waiting to be over it, waiting to feel like ourselves again, not realizing that moving with it is the healing. Find one small thing, light a candle, take a walk, let yourself cry in the car. You are not behind. You are not broken. My friend, you are human and you are in a process. Find Christine at ChristineDavies.com and on Substack at Journeying Alongside. The links for both are in the show notes. And when you're ready to stop carrying it alone, I have 2 places to find me. So you can find me on Substack for weekly doses of honesty, somatics, and support. And if you need to be heard right now, the emotional ER sessions are open. 1 session, just you and me, to regulate, to reflect, and to leave with a real plan. The links for all of those are in the show notes. Until next time, I love you.